In this problem, we'll be evaluating absolute values. For example, this is read the absolute value of 8. You always start by looking at the number inside the absolute value symbols. In this case, it's the number 8. The fact that the 8 is positive puts it 8 units to the right of 0. If you wanted, you could include 8 tick marks, 1 unit apiece, to indicate this is 8 units to the right of 0. The absolute value is the distance a number is from 0, and distance is always positive. So the distance between 0 and 8 is 8 units. So we would say the absolute value of 8 is 8. The next one would be read the absolute value of negative 4. Since the number inside the absolute value symbols is negative, we will put it to the left of 0. The fact that it was negative 4 means we will put it 4 units to the left of 0. If you wanted, you could include 4 tick marks, thinking of each one being 1 unit from 0. This would be negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, and negative 4. Remember that the absolute value is not the number itself, but the distance from its position and 0. Negative 4 is 4 units from 0. We don't consider the distance to be negative. Since the distance from negative 4 to 0 is positive 4, we say the absolute value of negative 4 is positive 4. Looking at the next number, we have the opposite of the absolute value of 9. So starting with what's inside the absolute values, it's the number 9. 9 is positive, so it would be 9 units to the right of 0. So the absolute value of 9 would be 9, because 9 is 9 units from 0. But our problem wasn't the absolute value of 9. Our problem was the opposite of the absolute value of 9. So if the absolute value of 9 is 9, what we have is the opposite of that, which would be negative 9. So as a quick summary, the absolute value of 9 was 9, and then we had to take the opposite of that answer, which gave us the opposite of 9, meaning negative 9. The next problem is read the opposite of the absolute value of negative 6. I'm going to start doing this problem ignoring the opposite of and just start by doing the absolute value of negative 6. This would be done by looking at the number in the absolute value symbol, which is negative 6. Since the number is negative, I will place it to the left of 0. The fact that it's negative 6 means I will place it 6 units to the left. If you want, you could put 6 unit tick marks between 0 and negative 6, showing that this distance is 6 units. Because the definition of the absolute value is the distance from the number to 0. The distance is always thought of as positive, so the distance between negative 6 and 0 is 6, so the absolute value of negative 6 would be 6. If you look, however, our problem was the opposite of that result. So if the absolute value of negative 6 is 6, and we are to find the opposite of that answer, that would be the opposite of this answer, so that would be the opposite of 6, and the opposite of 6 would be negative 6. So to compare the question and my answer, we started this question by doing just this part of the question. The absolute value of negative 6 came out to be right here, 6. So comparing what I've underlined here to what I've underlined here, notice that our question was the opposite of this answer, so that came out to be the opposite of 6.